In 47 seconds, $500 million vanished from FBI's budget. Chris Coons wasn't supposed to have Patel's contradictory testimony. He did. Cameras captured everything. What did the FBI director say that exposed him as the man defunding his own agency? But this institutional destruction began months earlier, in closed-door meetings where FBI veterans watched their life's work systematically dismantled. Senior agents with decades of counter-terrorism experience found themselves transferred to immigration cases. The FBI's most experienced Russian counterintelligence specialists were reassigned to street crime. Veterans who had tracked down international terrorists were suddenly investigating local carjackings. The pattern was unmistakable. Expertise was being systematically eliminated, replaced by political loyalty. Senate Judiciary Committee, 2:15 p.m. The mahogany hearing room buzzed with tension as FBI Director Kash Patel adjusted his navy tie. Expecting routine oversight questions, behind him sat rows of FBI personnel, many wondering if their jobs were next on the chopping block. What he didn't expect was Senator Chris Coons armed with Patel's own contradictory statements from different committee hearings. The Delaware Democrat sat calmly, methodically organizing documents that would expose the FBI director's devastating budget hypocrisy. Patel had made a critical mistake, telling different stories to different committees about the same budget. Coons had spent weeks cross-referencing testimony, building an airtight case of bureaucratic deception. Director Patel, Coons began, his voice carrying the measured authority of someone who'd spent weeks preparing this confrontation. I want to start by reading something you said to me during your confirmation hearing under oath. He lifted a transcript with deliberate precision. You said, and I quote, "I have no interest, no desire, and will not, if confirmed, go backwards. There will be no politicization at the FBI." Patel nodded confidently, thinking this was standard confirmation hearing review. Then you looked me in the eyes. Coons continued, his voice growing sharper, and said, "There will be no retribution actions taken by the FBI should I be confirmed as director. I told you that in your office. I tell you that again today." The chamber's atmosphere shifted. This wasn't routine oversight. This was a personal confrontation between two men, one of whom felt deliberately deceived. "I am concerned that that is not what has happened," Coons declared, pulling out a thick folder. "Since you took over as director, you've cleaned house or forced out senior leaders across the Bureau, in particular, targeting those that worked on investigations of President Trump." Patel's confident expression flickered slightly. The systematic listing was beginning. "The former acting director has just sued you for firing him for political reasons. So did a leader in the D.C. field office, and the well-respected leader of the Salt Lake City office was pushed out last month, leaving that office short-handed at a particularly difficult time." Each firing mentioned was another nail in the coffin of Patel's no retribution promise. The pattern was undeniable: investigate Trump, lose your job. "I am worried that these actions compromise the Bureau's ability to keep Americans safe." Coons continued, "Hundreds of agents have resigned. You are lowering application standards to fill vacancies. You've reassigned large numbers of agents to work on immigration and street crime issues other law enforcement agencies can handle." The institutional destruction was systematic and devastating. Coons was building towards something bigger. "In fact, you've shut down the Office of Integrity and Compliance, which makes sure that agents act in a lawful and ethical way, and reassigned staff away from domestic terrorism investigations, exactly at a moment I think we are all concerned about it." The room was completely silent. Even Republican senators were taking notes, realizing the scope of organizational dismantling Coons was describing. Then came the devastating pivot, the budget contradiction that would define this hearing and potentially end Patel's career. "I also have to ask," Coons said, pulling out yet another document with the precision of a prosecutor delivering a closing argument. "You came before the Appropriations Committee in May and told us you wanted a $500 million budget cut for the FBI, literally an effort to defund the police." The phrase hit the chamber like a thunderclap. Defund the police is coming from a Republican FBI director's own mouth, documented in congressional testimony. The irony was devastating. Conservatives had spent years attacking Democratic calls to defund police. Yet here was their own FBI director requesting exactly that. Republican senators in the chamber visibly shifted in their seats, realizing the political nightmare unfolding. How do you defend backing the blue, while your FBI director wants to cut $500 million from law enforcement? Patel's face visibly paled as he realized the trap he'd walked into. His own testimony, given to different committees, was being weaponized against him with surgical precision. But I am seeing an FBI leadership more focused on social media clout and on political revenge than on fighting crime. Coons concluded his opening barrage, each word carefully chosen to maximum political damage. The chamber was electric with tension. Even seasoned political reporters were frantically typing, recognizing they were witnessing a career-defining moment of institutional accountability. Now came the moment of truth. Coons had methodically destroyed Patel's credibility, detailed institutional collapse, and exposed budget hypocrisy. How would the FBI director respond? Director, have you ever ordered that an FBI employee be terminated because he or she worked on an investigation into President Trump? Patel's response was immediate deflection. The only way, generally speaking, an individual is terminated at the FBI is if they have violated their oath of office, violated the law, or failed to uphold the standards. It sounded reasonable until Coons pressed further. Could you comment on why you fired former acting FBI Director Driscoll? I can't because it is ongoing litigation. Could you say now, definitively under oath, that the rank-and-file agents who were assigned to work the 6th of January cases will not be terminated because that is what they were assigned to do? The evasion strategy was becoming obvious. Every specific question met with legal deflection. But Coons wasn't finished with the budget demolition. Then let me go to the appropriations question. In May, you testified before the subcommittee on which I served defending the president's request that we slash the FBI's budget by about $500 million. The day before, you testified the opposite in front of the House. Where are we in terms of the budget request? The contradiction was stunning, telling the House one thing, telling the Senate another. The FBI director caught in contradictory testimony about his own agency's funding. Patel attempted damage control. We at the FBI are in support of the president's budget, and we are in support of eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. Standard bureaucratic language, but Coons wasn't buying it. So if hundreds of agents have retired or taken the fork in the road offer, and you have vacancies, but you are requesting $500 million less, how does having fewer FBI agents help you tackle violent crime and address our national security issues? The logic was inescapable. You can't claim to fight crime while systematically reducing the resources to fight crime. Patel's response revealed the depth of the crisis. If we had this $500 million, we've done the math. It would take us 14 years to onboard every vacancy that is on the books currently at the FBI because we can't hire these folks and train them overnight. The admission was devastating. The FBI was so understaffed that even with full funding it would take over a decade to reach proper manning levels, and Patel was requesting less money during this crisis. We're looking for where the need is greatest. Patel continued desperately, and I am thrilled to have police officers. They might not have a college degree, but they got the street smarts and the cop smarts to become FBI agents. The lowering of standards admission was complete, from requiring college degrees to accepting street smarts, institutional decline in real time. Coons shifted to surveillance authority, exposing another contradiction. When you testified in front of the CJS subcommittee, we talked about Section 702. You told me you were in favor of reauthorizing FISA Section 702 with reforms like better training for agents and real consequences for inappropriate searches. Then came the killing blow. You were also closing down the Office of Internal Auditing at the FBI. That was the office created in the first Trump administration to improve the Bureau's compliance with Section 702. How can you continue to advocate for robust civil liberty protections, but shut down the office that was created to enforce those safeguards? The contradiction was complete. Claimed to strengthen oversight while eliminating oversight. It was bureaucratic doublespeak exposed in real time. Patel's response was more deflection. This is a great example of duplicative work. The inspection division has now been given the single source mandate. Translation. We eliminated the watchdog and merged its functions elsewhere. Classic bureaucratic restructuring to reduce accountability. The hearing's final moments revealed the scope of national security threats facing a weakened FBI. I am concerned about the rise in threats against members of our judiciary, Coons pressed. Patel's response was chilling. We have 35 open investigations, 17 against federal judges and the remainder against state court judges. 5 death threat cases against judges while the FBI was losing hundreds of experienced agents and cutting its budget by $500 million. As the hearing concluded, the devastating picture was complete. An FBI director who promised no retribution then systematically fired officials who investigated Trump, requested $500 million in budget cuts while claiming to fight crime, lowered hiring standards to fill positions vacated by mass resignations, shut down integrity oversight during a compliance crisis, redirected counterterrorism resources while judicial death threats increased, used ongoing litigation to avoid accountability for every controversial decision. The social media reaction was immediate and explosive. Defunding FBI trended within minutes, as clips of Patel requesting budget cuts went viral across all platforms. Conservative supporters found themselves in an impossible position, defending an FBI director who wanted to defund the police, while simultaneously attacking Democrats for the same rhetoric. Liberal critics had documented evidence of systematic institutional destruction and political retribution. The hashtag #CoonsDestroySpattle reached 1.8 million mentions within 3 hours, with video clips of the confrontation accumulating millions of views. TikTok users created compilation videos of Patel's evasive, "I can't comment" responses set to dramatic music that amplified the cover-up appearance. Cable news networks interrupted regular programming to analyze the hearing. Fox News found itself in the awkward position of explaining why their preferred FBI director was requesting massive budget cuts to law enforcement. CNN and MSNBC devoted wall-to-wall coverage to what they called the systematic destruction of federal law enforcement credibility. The political implications were staggering and immediate. Republicans, who'd spent years attacking Democratic calls to defund the police, now faced the impossible task of explaining why their FBI director was requesting exactly that. Campaign strategists across the country began calculating the electoral impact of defending someone who wanted to cut $500 million from law enforcement during a crime crisis. Democrats had documented evidence of political retribution and institutional sabotage wrapped for campaign advertisements. Within hours, former FBI officials began speaking out. "This is the systematic destruction of federal law enforcement," declared one former assistant director. "You can't fight crime, terrorism, and espionage with fewer agents, lower standards, and eliminated oversight." Legal experts noted the constitutional crisis brewing. When the FBI director uses ongoing litigation to avoid congressional oversight on every controversial decision, that is not transparency, that is obstruction, one constitutional scholar observed. The budget contradiction remained inexplicable. How do you strengthen law enforcement by cutting $500 million from law enforcement? How do you fight crime with fewer crime fighters? How do you maintain security while eliminating security oversight? Chris Coons had methodically exposed the central fraud of Patel's tenure, claiming to strengthen the FBI while systematically weakening it. The Delaware senator had used Patel's own words, testimony, and contradictory statements to reveal institutional sabotage disguised as reform. The American people deserved answers about why their FBI director was defunding their FBI. They deserved transparency about mass resignations, lowered standards, and eliminated oversight. Most importantly, they deserved to know whether political loyalty had replaced law enforcement professionalism. Sometimes the most devastating oversight doesn't require classified documents or secret investigations. Sometimes it just requires reading the FBI director's own contradictory testimony and asking obvious questions. What Chris Coons proved is that truth doesn't need elaborate conspiracy theories. It just needs careful attention to what officials say versus what they do. When the FBI director requests $500 million less, while hundreds of agents quit and death threats against judges increase, every American should ask, is this really making us safer? The answer, after watching Patel's evasive testimony, seems obvious to everyone, except the man responsible for giving it.